You know, it's wild. We spend billions, literally billions, building these elaborate corporate forecasting models. We just love our airtight Q3 projections, right?
The flawless 5-year plan.
Exactly. We build these massive, rigid structures, and they all operate on this one fundamental assumption that tomorrow's workforce is going to look exactly like today's.
Which is, a total myth. Because the entire modern professional ecosystem is engineered around this highly convenient fiction, the perfectly predictable, uninterrupted human being.
Right. But then you drop a single 15-month-old human into a brightly colored room with like 12 other toddlers, and suddenly all that beautiful corporate forecasting is worth absolutely nothing.
It just instantly evaporates.
It really does. You are instantly transported from a predictable professional ecosystem into what is honestly a biological and logistical war zone.
Yeah, that's a very accurate way to describe it.
So today in this deep dive, we're unpacking the absolute madness that is early childhood group care. And I mean, we really need to stop framing the quote-unquote daycare germ cycle as this cute, necessary phase of building immunity.
Because the reality is much darker than that.
Way darker. We're looking at a highly volatile macroeconomic friction point. It's essentially where careers and bank accounts just go to die.
And if you are listening to this, whether you're a parent who is currently dodging a cough or a manager watching a team member mysteriously vanish from a Zoom call.
Or just someone trying to figure out why your colleague looks like they haven't slept since 2018.
Right, exactly. This directly impacts you. The financial and structural fallout touches literally every single corner of the labor market.
So we're bringing you right into the trench today. But before we get to the daily domestic chaos, we have to establish the raw biological and financial math that sets the battlefield here, because the baseline numbers are just staggering.
They really are.
Infants and toddlers in group care average between 8 and 12 upper respiratory infections a year. 8 to 12.
Yeah, and let's break down the mechanics of those infections, too.
Yep.
A standard viral cycle typically presents active shedding symptoms for up to 10 days.
Okay.
So if we just do the basic biological math there, a single child can be symptomatic and potentially contagious for over 100 days out of the year.
100 days. That is nearly a third of the year.
It's massive.
And here is where that biological reality violently crashes into childcare health policies, because daycare centers have incredibly strict exclusion periods. The standard is this mandatory 24-hour fever-free policy.
Right, and that strictly means without the help of fever-reducing medication. You can't just give them Tylenol and drop them off.
But here's the bombshell from the data. Up to 59% of these daycare exclusions do not even meet the American Academy of Pediatrics medical guidelines.
Right, which means we are seeing this kind of administrative panic over like a clear runny nose. And it's driving a massive wave of completely unnecessary workforce absences.
I have to stop you there, though, because if a literal pediatrician says the kid is fine to go back, why are daycares overriding the doctors? Like, why are they so aggressively cautious?
Well, it comes down to their own operational survival, really. Childcare centers operate on these razor-thin margins.
Sure.
So if a stomach bug spreads and takes out 3 of their teachers, that center is suddenly out of compliance with state-mandated adult-to-child ratios.
Oh, wow. So it's a legal issue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They legally have to shut down classrooms, add in the constant fear of liability, plus incredibly high staff turnover, and their only defense mechanism is to err on the side of extreme exclusion.
So they just pass the structural friction directly onto the parents?
Yep, every single time.
Which brings up a wildly infuriating dynamic. Families are fighting tooth and nail for competitive childcare spots, right?
Yeah.
And they're paying absolute premium rates.
Astronomical rates in some places.
Yeah, in major professional hubs like Washington, D.C., you are looking at annual tuition easily exceeding $31,000 per child.
And the centers require full payment to hold the spot, completely regardless of attendance.
It is a dynamic known as the exclusion tuition paradox.
Right.
It's basically like paying a mortgage on a luxury apartment, but the landlord physically locks you out of the building for a third of the year every time you sneeze.
That is a brutally accurate analogy.
You're paying $150 to $160 a day for a spot you are legally barred from using, while simultaneously eating lost wages at work because you had to stay home.
How has this been accepted as a functional business model?
Well, I wouldn't say it's been accepted so much as just endured, and it is failing spectacularly on a macro scale.
How so?
When we zoom out, this inadequate care infrastructure and the resulting absenteeism, it acts as a persistent, heavy drag on national economic growth. We're looking at a cost to the economy of between $122 billion and $172 billion annually.
Wait, $172 billion. Where exactly is that money evaporating to?
It bleeds out across three main arteries. First, you have direct lost wages for parents who are forced to take unpaid leave.
Okay, that makes sense. Second, massive hits to corporate productivity. Just think about a product launch that gets delayed by 2 weeks because the mid-level managers driving it are suddenly quarantined.
Right, the whole timeline shifts.
Exactly. And third, lost tax revenue at both the state and federal levels because people are working fewer hours or they're just dropping out of the labor force entirely. It is a compounding economic fracture.
So, knowing that brutal math, let's look at how this manifests inside the actual household, because the friction doesn't start when you log on to your computer. It starts before the sun even comes up.
The dreaded morning negotiations.
Yes, let me set the scene for you. It is 5:45 in the morning. Two highly educated professionals are standing in a dark hallway, whispering aggressively so they don't wake the toddler.
I know the scene well.
One of them is holding an infrared thermometer like a bomb technician. The device reads 99.9 degrees Fahrenheit. And they immediately start debating whether they need to artificially add a degree because it was a forehead reading.
Or, picture the other scenario. A parent standing at the kitchen window holding a soiled tissue up to the dawn light.
Oh, no.
Yeah, intensely examining the color of the nasal discharge, desperately trying to convince themselves that a greenish-yellow tint is just, seasonal allergies rather than a full-blown adenovirus.
Because if it's not allergies, the workday is over before it begins. So these partners are frantically pulling up their digital calendars in the dark.
Yep.
One has a critical client presentation. The other has an all-hands product meeting. They are standing there in their pajamas, actively calculating whose career gets sacrificed today.
It's an intense moment.
Now, this early morning standoff, it feels like a quirky marriage dispute, right? But this is actually a high-stakes labor negotiation. If we are supposedly living in this modern era of dual career equity, why does this 5:45 a.m. whisper fight almost always end up actively feeding the gender wage gap?
Because the underlying psychology of the modern workplace practically forces it to.
Really?
When a sudden logistical crisis hits, rational economic panic collides with implicit corporate bias, and families rapidly default to traditional gender roles. Mothers typically become the on-call parent.
Right.
And when they take the hit and cancel their meetings, they immediately crash into what sociologists call the maternal wall.
Okay, let's break that down. What does the maternal wall actually look like in practice?
It's an unwritten, often subconscious bias. Managers and colleagues just assume a mother is now perpetually distracted, or maybe less committed to her professional role.
Just because she had to stay home one day.
Exactly. It doesn't matter if she was a top performer. The moment she logs off for a sick kid, the narrative shifts. This leads to subtle exclusions from high-profile projects, reduced work hours, missed promotions, and ultimately lower performance ratings.
Wow. So the mother's competence is suddenly questioned out of nowhere. But what about the fathers who do step up? Let's say the dad says, "I'll take the hit today." Does he get a medal for being a modern, involved parent?
Far from it, actually. Fathers face a different but equally punitive structural barrier. It's known as the commitment signal penalty.
Wait, why penalized? Aren't companies always loudly boasting about their paternity leave policies and family-friendly cultures?
Oh, sure, they boast about it in brochures. But corporate infrastructure is still fiercely loyal to the mid-20th century model.
The Mad Men era.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
They expect a single-earner household with a full-time, invisible caregiver at home. Employers have been deeply conditioned to expect undivided professional loyalty from male workers.
Right.
So when a father deviates from that expectation of full-time, uninterrupted availability to handle caregiving, workplaces often penalize him for lacking professional dedication. He is seen as weak or uncommitted.
So the system essentially punishes whichever parent takes the bullet.
Exactly. It's a lose-lose scenario.
Okay, so let's say they decide they can't take the hit. They gamble. They convince themselves the 99.9 reading is a total fluke. They do the morning drop-off and they speed to the office. What happens when they lose that gamble?
Well, at about 10:15 a.m., the house of cards collapses. A 100.4-degree reading at the daycare triggers an immediate crisis.
Ah, the mid-morning call of doom.
That's the one.
Most centers have an incredibly strict 60 to 90-minute emergency pickup window. The workday shatters instantly, and there is absolutely zero runway for a smooth, professional handover.
Yeah, you just drop everything.
Imagine a senior financial analyst in the middle of a Q3 forecast presentation to the executive board. The phone buzzes. It's the daycare. They have to completely derail the meeting, make up an excuse about an, quote, urgent client development, and physically sprint to the parking garage.
Or the HR manager who is midway through delivering a performance review.
Yeah.
They get the fever notification and have to bail immediately, just leaving their coworker sitting alone in a conference room with a half-eaten lunch.
That is brutal.
But that sudden exit is the physical manifestation of the biological certainty of a child clashing with the brittle corporate expectation of the ideal worker. And the professional fallout from that clash is severe.
And it never stops at just one pickup either. Then you have to launch the professional apology tour.
Oh, the apology tour.
It's the reputational strain of sending deeply apologetic emails to your team. Rescheduling an alignment call for the third time in 2 weeks because your house has been hit by hand, foot, and mouth disease.
Embarrassing.
My absolute favorite, or, well, perhaps most tragic reality check, is the associate partner sharing their screen during a major client pitch, only to accidentally reveal a slide that has been heavily scribbled over with digital pink crayon by their toddler 10 minutes prior.
I mean, it sounds like a chaotic comedy of errors, but the labor data paints a very dark picture of the actual consequences here.
What did the data show?
26% of parents report quitting their jobs entirely due to these childcare breakdowns.
26%.
Yes, and even more alarming, 23% report being fired.
Hold on, I need to make sure I heard that correctly. 23% of parents are being fired outright because of daycare illnesses.
Outright fired, yes.
How is it economically viable for a company to lose a quarter of its working parent workforce over something that is biologically inevitable?
It isn't viable at all. The cost of recruiting, hiring, and retraining replacements is astronomical. Yet that 23% termination rate represents a threefold increase since 2018.
A threefold increase. Why are corporations choosing to fire otherwise competent employees instead of just, building a tiny bit of flexibility into the system?
Because true flexibility requires a complete redesign of how we measure productivity. And most corporate cultures are fundamentally unwilling to do that.
They just want butts in seats.
Exactly. They still view a sick toddler as an individual employee's personal failure to manage their private life, rather than recognizing it as a systemic, unavoidable reality.
Right.
If the rigid structure requires you to be at your desk from 9 to 5, and a daycare virus prevents that, the structure dictates that you are the broken component that needs to be replaced.
It is like trying to defuse a literal bomb while presenting to your boss. And if you somehow survive the workday intact, you still have to deal with the grueling aftermath at home.
Oh, the home quarantine.
Yeah, once you actually extract the child from the daycare center, you enter this endless cycle of back-to-back quarantine. The child comes home, and the virus just indiscriminately tears through the whole house.
A single, highly contagious virus can keep a family in a state of rolling, partial quarantine for 3 to 4 weeks.
3 to 4 weeks from one bug.
Yeah. The toddler sheds the virus for days, then partner A goes down, and just as they recover, partner B catches it.
The physical reality of this is pure exhaustion. You've got an executive trying to maintain authority on a critical video call. They are wearing a structured, professional blazer on top, but comfortable, stain-covered lounge pants on the bottom.
A classic remote work uniform.
And off camera, they are literally using one foot to slide a bowl of dry cereal out of the reach of a crying toddler. Meanwhile, that same toddler is pressing their sticky face against the glass office door, leaving a highly visible smudge during the entire meeting.
It's impossible to focus.
Or the midnight ritual. The exhausted parent intensely sanitizing every doorknob and remote control in the house, only to sit down, exhausted, and watch their toddler walk over and slowly lick the newly sanitized television screen.
And this extended quarantine period leads directly to a massive, hidden economic drain.
Which is?
The complete liquidation of paid time off.
Oh, right, PTO.
PTO is functionally designed by human resources to allow workers to rest, recharge, and maintain their cognitive reserves. Right? It is meant for recovery.
In theory.
Right. But for parents of young children in group care, vacation time is entirely consumed by illness management.
It's basically paid time scrubbing bodily fluids. A corporate director looks at their HR portal at the end of the year and sees 15 days of PTO taken, but they haven't seen a beach. Every single one of those days was spent sitting in a dark room holding a feverish child.
Yep.
Or the parent who is theoretically taking a sick day to recover themselves, but they are on their hands and knees scrubbing dried rehydration fluid out of a rug with an old toothbrush, all while frantically answering Slack messages on their smartwatch just to prove to their boss they are still indispensable.
And the destruction of that worker recovery is catastrophic for long-term productivity.
Because they never actually rest.
Exactly. The human brain requires periods of genuine disengagement to maintain executive function and creativity. When parents use their vacation days to act as full-time nurses and home administrators, their cognitive reserves are completely depleted. You have partners constantly trading shifts in a state of rolling burnout.
But we also have to acknowledge that having paid time off to liquidate is in itself a white-collar luxury, isn't it?
Absolutely. That is a crucial point. For millions of low-income or hourly workers who lack access to paid sick leave entirely, this dynamic is economically devastating.
Because if you don't work, you don't get paid.
Right. When daycare mandates a 48-hour exclusion for a fever, an hourly worker doesn't just lose their PTO, they lose their rent money. The data shows these workers face an average of $815 in lost weekly wages for unpaid leave.
$815 in a single week.
Yes.
That isn't just a tough break. That is the difference between buying groceries and defaulting on a car loan.
Exactly. The ripple effect on the local economy is immediate. When working-class families suddenly lose $800 in a week because a toddler has a runny nose, their discretionary spending vanishes.
Right.
And more critically, they're constantly forced to make an impossible choice: manage a sick child, or risk being part of that 23% termination statistic we discussed earlier.
It really is an undeclared logistical war.
It truly is.
We have to bring all these threads together because the picture we've painted today is wild. The daycare germ cycle is not just some necessary biological rite of passage. It is a massive, systemic disruption that forces a brutal clash between biological reality and rigid corporate structures.
Precisely.
It drains household finances through the double billing paradox. It liquidates all available rest time, destroying the very concept of worker recovery. It strains marriages through those endless 5.45 a.m. thermometer standoffs, and it actively reinforces the gender wage gap by penalizing whoever stays home.
The ultimate takeaway here is that this chaos is not an individual failing. If you are struggling, it is because the friction is built into the architecture of the system itself.
Yeah, if you are a parent listening to this, don't dive. Take a deep breath. This is your validation. You aren't failing at balancing work and family. The system you're operating within is mathematically and biologically impossible to balance.
Completely impossible.
And if you aren't a parent, this is exactly why your colleagues with young children are operating in a state of deep, perpetual exhaustion. It fully explains why macroeconomic productivity is taking such a massive, invisible hit behind the scenes.
The corporate demand for constant, predictable human availability simply shatters when applied to the reality of raising young children.
Which leaves us with one final, incredibly provocative thought to mull over. We have spent this entire time talking about the absolute chaos of simply having a daycare spot, the financial drain, the illnesses, the stress.
Right.
But the underlying data reveals a terrifying structural cliff. We are currently looking at a national deficit of 3.6 million childcare spots.
And 3.6 million missing spots means the infrastructure has zero elasticity. It is a single point of failure.
There is no operational redundancy at all. You can't just casually find a backup center when yours closes or prices you out.
Not a chance.
So if we are already seeing a threefold increase in parents being fired just from the illness exclusions at the centers we do have, what happens to the modern dual-career household when this fragile, single point-of-failure childcare infrastructure shrinks even further?
It's a scary question.
Are we mathematically accelerating toward a future where having two working parents is a luxury only the ultra-wealthy can afford? Because if a single 15-month-old can completely shatter a multi-billion-dollar corporate forecast today, imagine what happens to the economy when there's simply nowhere for them to go tomorrow.